The spinster's children. The autumn wind scattered golden leaves across the schoolyard as Miss Lisa Hammond dismissed her students for the day. At 32, she carried herself with the straight-backed posture expected of a frontier schoolteacher, her brown hair pulled into a practical bun, her high-necked blouse fastened to the throat with a small cameo brooch, her mother's sole legacy. "Remember, your compositions are due tomorrow," she called after the departing children, 2 full pages on the importance of honesty. As the last child vanished down the dusty road, Lisa sighed and turned back to the modest one-room schoolhouse that had been her domain for nearly 6 years. Ridgeton, Wyoming territory wasn't much, just a small settlement that had sprouted alongside the new railway, but the school represented everything she'd worked for since leaving her Pennsylvania home. She was erasing the arithmetic lessons from the blackboard when the door creaked open behind her. "Miss Hammond," Mayor Simmons's gravelly voice stopped her mid-motion. "We need a word." Lisa turned to find not just the mayor, but 3 other town council members filing into her classroom. Reverend Winters, with his perpetual look of mild disappointment, Mr. Patterson the banker, whose thin lips seemed incapable of smiling, and Mrs. Holloway, the formidable owner of the general store. "Is something wrong?" Lisa asked, unconsciously straightening her already impeccable posture. Mayor Simmons cleared his throat. "There have been concerns, Miss Hammond, from parents. There will be a meeting tonight at the town hall. Please plan on attending." The mayor waited until she nodded her understanding, and soon she was alone. Lisa wondered what was happening. What concerns do parents have? That they hadn't felt they could come to her first? A deep foreboding filled her, and she only hoped that she would still have her teaching job at the end of the day. That evening, the town hall's sparse meeting room felt suffocating as Lisa stood before the council table. A kerosene lamp cast harsh shadows across the faces of the 4 people who held her future in their hands. "Miss Hammond," Mayor Simmons began formally, "you've been teaching our children for several years now." 6 years this November, she confirmed, doing her best to keep her voice steady. "And in that time, you've remained unmarried?" Lisa clasped her hands tightly to prevent them from trembling. "I have dedicated my life to the education of the children of this town, Mayor." Mrs. Holloway, her steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, leaned forward. "A woman your age without a husband raises questions, Miss Hammond, especially one responsible for impressionable young minds." "I don't understand," Lisa said, though the sinking feeling in her stomach suggested otherwise. Reverend Winters folded his hands piously. "The good book tells us a woman's purpose is to be fruitful and multiply. Some parents worry about the example you set for their daughters." "My teaching record is exemplary," Lisa responded, heat rising in her cheeks. "The children's test scores—" "It's not about test scores," Mr. Patterson interrupted. "It's about moral standing. Mrs. Holloway's daughter is getting married next month at 17. Yet here you are, at 32, never married. One must wonder why." Mrs. Holloway's eyes narrowed. "Indeed. Why has no man chosen you, Miss Hammond? Is there something unsuitable about your character?" The implication hung in the air like a thundercloud. Lisa felt dizzy with indignation and fear. 6 years of service, of dedicating every waking hour to her students, reduced to speculation about her marital status. I haven't married because—" Lisa faltered, her mind racing desperately. Then, without planning it, the words tumbled out, "because I already have children to care for." 4 pairs of eyes widened simultaneously. "Children?" Reverend Winters echoed. "Yes," Lisa continued, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain they could hear it. "My sister's children. She and her husband passed away last winter. I've adopted them. 3 beautiful children. They've been with my aunt in Chicago while I secured suitable accommodations here." The lie felt foreign on her tongue. Lisa Hammond had never told such a falsehood in her life. She had no sister, no nieces or nephews, and certainly no children. Mayor Simmons looked skeptical. "This is the first we're hearing of these children." "I'm a private person," Lisa said, straightening her shoulders, "and I didn't want the children to face gossip about their orphaned status when they arrive." "And when exactly will they arrive?" Mrs. Holloway asked sharply. Lisa's mind raced. "The arrangements are nearly complete. They should arrive within the month." The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Mayor Simmons spoke. "Very well, Miss Hammond. If these children arrive as you say, the council will reconsider its position. You may continue teaching until then. But, added Reverend Winters, if these children fail to materialize within 1 month, we will have no choice but to question both your honesty and suitability for shaping young minds. Oh, Lisa, what have you done? Mrs. Wright exclaimed, her weathered hands pausing in their knitting. The small room above the millinery shop that she rented was sparsely furnished but meticulously neat, much like Lisa herself. Now she paced its confines like a caged animal, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. I don't know what came over me, Lisa confessed, sinking onto her narrow bed. One moment I was defending my teaching record, and the next I was inventing children and a dead sister. Mrs. Wright, a widow of 60 whose arthritis had forced her to take in boarders, shook her head. The council has always been full of self-important windbags, but to question your character because you're unmarried? It's shameful. What am I going to do? Lisa whispered. In 4 weeks, they'll expect to see 3 children who don't exist. Could you write to that orphanage in Chicago? The one where you taught before coming here? Lisa nodded slowly. I could ask if they know of 3 siblings needing placement, but even if such children exist, there's no time for proper adoption procedures. Mrs. Wright patted her hand. Write the letter tonight. God works in mysterious ways, Lisa. Perhaps he already has a solution in mind. Later, by lamplight, Lisa penned a desperate letter to Mrs. Abernathy, the matron of St. Catherine's Home for Children. As she wrote, hot tears splashed onto the paper, blurring her usually precise handwriting. 2 weeks later, Lisa was correcting arithmetic exercises when Billy Thompson burst into the schoolroom. Miss Hammond. There's been a train accident. The boy's face was flushed with excitement and concern. Pa says it's bad. The train derailed 10 miles east. They're bringing injured folks to town. Lisa's heart sank. The railway had brought prosperity to Ridgeton, but also danger. Class dismissed, she announced. Go directly home and stay out of the way of the rescue efforts. Within the hour, Lisa had joined other townswomen at Dr. Burke's clinic, rolling bandages and preparing broth. Dr. Thomas Burke, a 38-year-old widower with serious eyes and prematurely silver-streaked dark hair, gave rapid instructions as they awaited the arrival of the injured. Miss Hammond, he called, I need you to help Mrs. Holloway organize supplies. We don't know how many we'll need to treat. Lisa nodded, momentarily surprised to see Mrs. Holloway from the council among the volunteers. The older woman gave her a curt nod, their recent confrontation apparently set aside in the face of emergency. When the first wagon of injured passengers arrived, Lisa was assigned to distribute blankets and water. The October air had turned bitter cold, and many survivors were suffering from exposure along with their injuries. It was near dusk when she found them, 3 small figures huddled together on a bench outside the crowded clinic. The oldest, a girl of perhaps 10, had her arms protectively around a younger boy and a tiny girl who couldn't be more than 6. Are you hurt? Lisa asked gently, kneeling before them. Have you seen the doctor? The oldest child shook her head, her face smudged with dirt and tear tracks. They said we're not hurt bad enough. Others need the doctor more. Lisa noticed the girl's split lip and the bruise forming on the boy's forehead. Where are your parents? The youngest girl began to sob. The boy stared at his feet. The oldest one finally whispered, They're dead. Our ma was thrown from the train. Pa was crushed when the car tipped. Something twisted in Lisa's chest. What are your names? I'm Emma, the oldest said quietly. This is James and Lucy. We were going to live with our uncle in Oregon, but Pa had the address, and it was in his coat. Lisa wrapped a blanket around Lucy's thin shoulders. Let me take you inside. You need to be warm, and those cuts should be cleaned. Dr. Burke was setting a man's broken arm when Lisa led the children into the crowded clinic. Doctor, she called softly, these children need attention when you have a moment. He glanced up, his tired eyes taking in the 3 small figures. Put them in my office for now. I'll check them as soon as I can. The doctor's office was small but warm, with a fire crackling in the grate. Lisa helped the children wash their faces and hands with water from a basin. Lucy's sobs had quieted to occasional hiccups. James hadn't spoken a word. Are you hungry? Lisa asked and received 3 solemn nods. She retrieved bread and cheese from the clinic kitchen and watched as the children devoured it. It was nearly midnight when Dr. Burke finally entered, his sleeves rolled up and his collar open with exhaustion. I understand we have 3 young patients waiting very patiently, he said, attempting a smile. As he gently examined each child, Lisa explained what little she knew of their situation. The doctor's face grew increasingly grave. Minor injuries, he finally pronounced. Emma has some bruised ribs, James has a mild concussion, and Lucy is suffering mostly from shock. Physically, they'll recover quickly. And what happens to them now? Lisa asked quietly. Dr. Burke paused. With no known relatives, they'll be sent to the orphanage in Cheyenne once they're well enough to travel. 3 days, perhaps 4. Lisa looked at the children now dozing on the office settee. Emma, even in sleep, had one arm around each younger sibling. Doctor, she said suddenly, I need to speak with you privately. In the hallway, words tumbled out as Lisa explained her predicament with the town council and her impulsive lie. Let me understand, Dr. Burke said slowly. You told the council you had adopted 3 children, who coincidentally now exist, orphaned from the very train accident that brought them here? Put that way, it sounded both calculating and absurd. Lisa flushed with shame. I know how it sounds, she whispered, but seeing these children tonight, it feels like more than coincidence. You're suggesting you take in 3 traumatized orphans to save your teaching position? His tone was incredulous, almost harsh. No. Well, yes, that was my first thought, Lisa admitted. But sitting with them, seeing how they protect each other, I can't bear the thought of them being separated in some orphanage. Dr. Burke studied her face for a long moment. Miss Hammond, caring for children requires more than good intentions. These 3 have lost everything. They need stability, patience, and resources I'm not sure you possess. I have the first 2 in abundance, Lisa said firmly. As for resources, I have my salary and savings. It would be tight, but we would manage. And your accommodations? That small room above the millinery? Mrs. Wright has an unused storeroom we could convert to a bedroom. It's not ideal, but it's better than an orphanage. The doctor shook his head. I cannot, in good conscience, release these children into an arrangement based on deception. Lisa felt tears threatening. Then help me make it legitimate. Help me apply for proper guardianship. These children need a home, doctor. And somehow, I need them too. Something in her earnest plea seemed to reach him. His stern expression softened slightly. 3 days, he finally said. I'll keep them here for 3 days. Use that time to make suitable arrangements if you're serious. But, Miss Hammond? His eyes held hers firmly. If you begin this, you must be committed to these children regardless of your teaching position. Their hearts cannot withstand another abandonment. The first night with the children in her tiny quarters was chaos Lisa couldn't have imagined. Lucy wept for her mother. James refused to speak, but clung to Lisa's skirts whenever she moved. Emma watched everything with suspicious eyes, as if waiting for some betrayal. This is only temporary, Lisa explained as she arranged blankets on the floor for herself, giving the children her bed. Mrs. Wright is clearing the storeroom tomorrow, and we'll make a proper bedroom for you children. Why are you doing this? Emma asked bluntly. Are you getting paid to take us? The question stung. No, Emma. I'm doing this because every child deserves a home. We had a home, the girl said flatly. It's gone now. In the middle of the night, Lisa awoke to a warm wetness seeping through her blankets. James had crawled beside her and wet himself in his sleep. I'm sorry, he whispered, his first words since arriving. It's all right, Lisa soothed, changing him into the oversized shirt she'd borrowed from Mrs. Wright to serve as a nightshirt. Accidents happen. Pa would have whipped him for that, Lucy announced from the bed, apparently awake. Lisa's heart clenched. Well, I'm not your pa. And in this home, we don't hurt each other for accidents. As she settled back onto her damp blankets with James curled against her side, Lisa stared at the ceiling, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Class, I'd like you to welcome Emma, James, and Lucy, Lisa announced the following Monday. They are my children, recently arrived from Chicago. 20 pairs of curious eyes examined the newcomers. Emma stood stiffly in the dress Mrs. Holloway had surprisingly donated from her store. James clutched a slate Mrs. Wright had found in the shop's basement. Lucy, in a pinafore hastily sewn over the weekend, looked around with undisguised interest. They can sit with Billy and Sarah Brown, Lisa continued, gesturing to an open bench. The morning progressed with reasonable calm until midday recess, when Lisa noticed Mrs. Patterson, the banker's wife, approaching across the schoolyard. With her was Reverend Winters's wife, both women radiating curiosity. "Miss Hammond," Mrs. Patterson called, "we simply had to meet your new arrivals. The whole town is talking about your instant family." Lisa tensed. "Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Winters. Yes, these are my sister's children, Emma, James, and Lucy." Mrs. Patterson bent toward James with an exaggerated smile. "And how do you like living with your auntie, young man?" James shifted uncomfortably. "She's nice." "Of course she is. And tell me, was it a very long journey from Chicago?" "We came on the train," James replied innocently. "Miss Hammond found us at the train." "At the train station," Lisa interjected quickly. "I met them when they arrived." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose. "Is that so? How interesting, since most passengers from last week's accident were taken to Dr. Burke's clinic first." Lisa felt cold dread spreading through her chest. "Yes, well, fortunately the children weren't badly hurt, so they came directly into my care." Mrs. Winters smiled thinly. "Providential timing, wouldn't you say? Just when the council was questioning your situation." "God works in mysterious ways," Lisa replied, borrowing Mrs. Wright's phrase. As the women finally departed, Lisa caught Emma watching her with a calculating expression. The girl had clearly understood the undercurrents of the conversation. That evening, as they ate a simple supper in their now expanded quarters, Mrs. Wright had indeed cleared the old storeroom, creating a snug, if windowless, bedroom for the children. A knock came at the door. Dr. Burke stood in the hallway, medical bag in hand. "I've come to check on my patients," he announced. While he examined each child, pronouncing them healing well, Lisa prepared tea. When the children were occupied with the picture book he'd brought as a gift, the doctor drew her aside. "Mayor Simmons questioned me today about the children," he said in a low voice. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that they were orphaned in the accident. I didn't mention your previous arrangement with the council." His expression was troubled. "Miss Hammond, this deception is becoming dangerous." "It's not a deception anymore," Lisa said firmly. "I've applied for guardianship papers, as you suggested. And I care for these children, truly." "I can see that," he admitted, watching as Lisa automatically wiped jam from Lucy's chin with a napkin. "But the council may not be so easily convinced of your sudden maternal instincts." "What would you have me do?" "Tell them I lied initially, but now it's magically come true?" She shook her head. "They'd remove me from my position immediately, and possibly the children from my care." Dr. Burke groaned. "You've created quite a tangled web, Miss Hammond." "It's not a web if my intentions are genuine." She met his gaze directly. "And they are. These children need me." Something in his expression softened. "Perhaps you need them as well." Later, after the doctor had left and the children were asleep, Lisa sat by the window, staring at the stars. He was right. In just a few days, these 3 orphans had awakened something in her she hadn't known was sleeping, a capacity for maternal love that transcended blood ties. Emma had helped Lucy with her hair that morning, showing a gentleness at odds with her defensive exterior. James had proudly carried in firewood, eager for Lisa's approval, and Lucy had slipped her small hand into Lisa's as they walked to school, a gesture of trust that brought tears to her eyes. They were becoming a family, however unconventionally it had begun. A week later, Lucy's screams tore through the night, waking everyone in the small apartment. Lisa rushed to the children's room to find the little girl thrashing in her bed, still caught in the grip of a nightmare. "The train is falling," Lucy cried as Lisa gathered her into her arms. "Mama is flying away." "Shh, you're safe now," Lisa soothed, rocking the trembling child. "I've got you." Emma sat up in the bed she shared with her sister. "She has these dreams a lot," she said quietly. "Ma used to sing to her." "Would you like me to sing?" Lisa offered. Lucy nodded against her shoulder, hiccuping with subsiding sobs. Lisa began a lullaby her own mother had sung, her voice soft in the darkness. Gradually, Lucy's breathing steadied. "Our pa drank a lot," Emma said suddenly, her voice barely audible. "He was mean when he drank." "Ma was sick for a long time before she died. Not in the train. She really died last year." Lisa stilled, continuing to rock Lucy, but listening intently. "Pa said we had to go live with Uncle Frank in Oregon, but—" Emma's voice caught. "I think he was just taking us somewhere to leave us. He did that before. He left us with neighbors for weeks." James spoke from his small cot. "Are you going to send us away when we're bad?" The naked fear in his voice broke Lisa's heart. "No, James. Never. You three are staying with me no matter what." "Even if we wet the bed or have nightmares?" Lucy mumbled against her neck. "Even then," Lisa promised. "We're a family now." As she spoke the words, she realized their truth. Whatever had begun as a desperate lie had transformed into the most honest thing in her life. "This emergency meeting of the town council will come to order," Mayor Simmons announced, his gavel striking with ominous finality. It was Sunday afternoon, and Lisa sat rigidly in the town hall facing the council table. Dr. Burke had arrived unexpectedly during dinner with news that the council had called a special session regarding her position. "Miss Hammond," the mayor continued, "serious concerns have been raised about your truthfulness and moral character." Lisa clasped her hands tightly in her lap. "I'm not aware of any basis for such concerns, Mayor." Mrs. Patterson stepped forward from the small crowd gathered behind Lisa. "I visited Miss Hammond's classroom last week and spoke with the children she claims are her sister's orphans. The boy clearly indicated they met Miss Hammond at the train accident, not upon arriving from Chicago as she claimed." Murmurs rippled through the room. Lisa felt dizzy with apprehension. "Furthermore," Mrs. Patterson continued, "I've made inquiries. There was no family named Hammond listed among the passengers. These children's surname is Miller, and they were traveling with their father, a Mr. Jonathan Miller, a widower." Reverend Winters leaned forward. "Miss Hammond, did you lie to this council about adopting your sister's children?" The moment stretched like glass about to shatter. Lisa took a shallow breath. "Yes," she said clearly. "When questioned about my unmarried status, I panicked and invented a story about adopting my sister's children. I have no sister. At the time, there were no children." Gasps and whispers filled the room. Mayor Simmons banged his gavel for silence. "However," Lisa continued, rising to her feet, "when those 3 orphans from the train accident needed a home, I saw it as both a responsibility and a blessing. I have applied for legal guardianship. I love Emma, James, and Lucy as if they were my own blood." "Convenient timing," Mr. Patterson remarked coldly. "When your job was threatened, orphans appeared like magic." "There was nothing magical about the accident that killed their father," Lisa replied, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "But yes, the timing was providential. Those children needed me as much as I needed them." "This is outrageous," Mayor Simmons declared. "You lied to this council and have been perpetuating that lie. As educators, we expect absolute honesty and moral rectitude." "I made a mistake," Lisa acknowledged. "One I deeply regret, but caring for these children is not part of that mistake. It's the truest thing I've ever done." "Be that as it may," Reverend Winters interjected, "we cannot have someone of questionable honesty teaching our children. I move that Miss Hammond be dismissed from her position, effective immediately." "Second," Mr. Patterson added promptly. "All in favor?" Mayor Simmons asked. The mayor and Mr. Patterson raised their hands immediately. Reverend Winters followed after a moment's hesitation. All eyes turned to Mrs. Holloway, who had remained silent throughout the proceedings. The stern-faced shopkeeper studied Lisa thoughtfully. "Before I vote," she said, "I'd like to ask Miss Hammond one question. If maintaining your teaching position meant giving up those children, what would you choose?" Lisa didn't hesitate. "The children." "Without question?" Mrs. Holloway nodded slowly. "I've watched you with those 3 this past week. You've purchased clothing and books when your salary barely covers your own needs. You've stayed up nights with the little one's nightmares. Yes, Mrs. Wright told me. That's not the behavior of someone perpetuating a convenient lie." She turned to her fellow council members. "I vote against dismissal. This town needs a teacher who cares for children beyond the schoolroom walls." "That's still 3 votes for dismissal," Mayor Simmons declared. "Miss Hammond, you are relieved of your duties, effective immediately. Miss Jenkins will take over your classes tomorrow." Lisa felt the room spinning around her. 6 years of teaching, her reputation, her livelihood, all gone. Yet strangely, her first thought was not for herself, but for the children waiting at Mrs. Wright's. "I understand," she said quietly. "May I collect my personal belongings from the schoolhouse?" "Supervised," the mayor specified. "Tomorrow morning." As the meeting adjourned, Lisa stood frozen, unsure how to face the children with this news. A gentle hand touched her elbow. Come along, Dr. Burke said softly. I'll walk you home. Outside in the crisp autumn air, Lisa finally allowed tears to fall. What will I do? How will I support them now? One step at a time, the doctor advised. First, let's tell the children together. Emma had overheard everything before they even opened the door. She stood in the center of the small sitting room, fists clenched at her sides. You lied about us, she accused as Lisa entered. You only took us in to keep your job. Emma, it's not that simple, Lisa began, but the girl cut her off. You're just like Pa. Telling lies when it suits you, and now you've lost your job, you'll send us away too. That's enough, Dr. Burke said firmly. Miss Hammond may have made a mistake in how this began, but she's fighting to keep you three together now. James appeared in the bedroom doorway, Lucy hiding behind him. Are we going to the orphanage? He asked, his lower lip trembling. Lisa knelt down, opening her arms. No, you're staying right here with me. We'll manage somehow. But your teaching, Emma started. Is not as important as you three, Lisa finished. I can find other work. Lucy broke away from James and ran to Lisa, throwing her arms around her neck. I want you to be our mama, she declared. Through her tears, Lisa saw Dr. Burke watching them, his expression unreadable. I want that too, Lucy, she whispered, more than anything. Over the next days, word of Lisa's dismissal spread through Ridgeton. She applied for positions at the hotel and general store, but doors that had once opened to the respected schoolteacher now closed to the woman of questionable character. It was Mrs. Wright who suggested the meeting at the church. The council doesn't speak for all of Ridgeton, the landlady insisted. Let's hear what the mothers of your students have to say. The gathering was larger than Lisa expected. Women she'd taught alongside, mothers of current and former students, even a few she barely knew, filled the church's small meeting room. Mrs. Holloway stood to address them. We all know why Miss Hammond was dismissed. The question is, do we agree with the council's decision? My Sarah has learned more in 2 years with Miss Hammond than in all her schooling before, Mrs. Wilson declared. She's the finest teacher this town has seen. And those children, added Mrs. Davis, whose son had been in Lisa's first class. Anyone with eyes can see they adore her. My Henry says the little one follows her like a duckling. Dr. Burke, the only man present, spoke from the back of the room. I've prepared formal adoption papers for Miss Hammond. These children have suffered trauma that would break many adults, yet they're thriving in her care. Mrs. Holloway agreed. I propose we petition the council to reinstate Miss Hammond. Honesty is important, yes, but so is compassion and recognizing when someone has become essential to our community. Patsy, Reverend Winters's wife, surprisingly raised her hand. If I may, my husband has been troubled by his vote. Perhaps a compromise? Miss Hammond could be reinstated on probation with certain conditions. By evening's end, a plan had formed. Lisa returned home with the first glimmer of hope she'd felt in days. The town hall was packed for the special meeting. Lisa sat with Emma, James, and Lucy in the front row, all four dressed in their Sunday best. Dr. Burke sat directly behind them, a reassuring presence. Mayor Simmons called the meeting to order with obvious reluctance. We're here to address the petition regarding Miss Hammond's teaching position. Mrs. Holloway, you may present your case. Mrs. Holloway outlined the community's support, presenting signatures from parents representing over 3/4 of the school's students. Then, unexpectedly, she called Emma forward. The 10-year-old stood straight-backed before the council, her voice clear despite her nerves. Miss Hammond is the best person we've ever lived with. She doesn't yell or hit even when James wets the bed or Lucy breaks things. She helps us with nightmares and makes sure we eat before she does. James stepped up beside his sister. She reads to us every night, even when she's tired. And she said we could stay forever, even after you fired her. Lucy, not to be outdone, added her piece. She's our mama now. You made her sad, and that's not nice. A ripple of laughter and murmurs swept the room. Dr. Burke approached the council table next, placing a sheaf of papers before them. These are legal adoption papers, properly filed with the territorial court, he explained. Miss Hammond is now the legal mother of Emma James and Lucy Miller Hammond. Whatever circumstances began this family, it is now binding in the eyes of the law. Mayor Simmons looked distinctly uncomfortable. While this is all very touching, it doesn't change the fact that Miss Hammond lied to this council. If I may, Reverend Winters interjected, surprising everyone. The good book teaches us that mercy triumphs over judgment. Miss Hammond has admitted her wrongdoing and demonstrated genuine care for these children. Perhaps there's room for forgiveness here. After nearly an hour of debate, the council reached its decision. Mayor Simmons cleared his throat. Miss Hammond, the council has voted to reinstate you on a 6-month probationary basis with the following conditions: weekly reports to the council on your teaching, a public apology to the community, and... He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the final condition: mandatory attendance at church socials to demonstrate your commitment to proper social integration. Lisa could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Thank you," she managed. "I accept all conditions gratefully." As the meeting adjourned, well-wishers surrounded Lisa and the children. Through the crowd, she caught Dr. Burke's eye. He gave her a small nod and a rare smile that warmed her more than all the congratulations combined. "Is this really our house?" Lucy asked, wide-eyed as they stood before the small cottage at the edge of town. "It's a rental," Lisa explained. "Dr. Burke owns it. It's not grand, but it has a garden," James exclaimed, already running toward the small patch of earth behind the cottage. "And separate bedrooms for boys and girls," Emma noted with approval as they entered. The cottage was modest but sound, with 2 small bedrooms, a cozy kitchen, and a sitting room with a stone fireplace. It was sparsely furnished with basic necessities: beds, a table with chairs, and a sofa that had seen better days. Dr. Burke said the previous tenant left most of the furniture. Lisa explained, "We'll add our own touches to make it home." That evening, as Lisa prepared a simple stew on the new stove, a knock came at the door. Dr. Burke stood on the porch, medical bag in hand. "House call," he explained, "just checking that everyone's settling in properly." While the children showed him their rooms, Lisa set an extra place at the table. "Will you join us for supper, Doctor?" "It's nothing fancy, but there's plenty." Over the meal, Lisa noticed how naturally Dr. Burke interacted with the children. He answered James's endless questions about human bones, complimented Emma on helping set the table, and gently teased Lucy about the carrot she was trying to hide under her bread. "You're good with them," she remarked as they washed dishes together afterward, the children playing a card game at the table. "I had younger siblings," he replied. "And my wife and I had hoped for children before she passed." Lisa had heard rumors of his tragic marriage, his young wife dying in childbirth along with their infant son, but he'd never spoken of it directly before. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "It was many years ago." His hand stilled on the plate he was drying. "Watching you with these 3, it's reminded me that family comes in many forms." Later, as they sat before the fire, Dr. Burke read aloud from a book of adventure stories he'd brought as a housewarming gift. Lisa watched the children's rapt faces in the firelight. Lucy curled in her lap, James leaning against her side, even Emma drawn into the story despite her attempts to appear mature and unaffected. When Dr. Burke turned a page, his hand briefly brushed against Lisa's, where it rested on Lucy's shoulder. The momentary contact sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the crackling fire. "Another chapter?" he asked as the current one ended. 3 children's voices chorused "yes" before Lisa could respond. She smiled and nodded, content to extend this moment of peace, this feeling of home, for as long as possible. 5 years later. "Hold still, everyone," the photographer instructed from behind his large camera. "Just a few seconds more." Lisa smoothed Lucy's ribbons one last time before returning to her position. At 11, Lucy still had a tendency toward perpetual motion that made formal portraits challenging. "James, straighten your tie," Emma whispered. At 15, she had become a poised young woman, already talking of attending the teachers' college in Denver, following in her adoptive mother's footsteps. James, 13 and shooting up like a weed, adjusted his tie with a good-natured grimace. "Is this really necessary?" he whispered back. "It's tradition," Dr. Burke, Thomas as Lisa now called him, replied with a smile. "Every year on your adoption day, we document how this family has grown." Lisa rested her hand on her rounded belly, feeling the baby shift beneath her touch. Their first child together, due in early spring, had been a joyous surprise 2 years into their marriage. "And stand firm," the photographer called. 3, 2, 1. The flash powder exploded in a brief, bright burst, capturing the moment. Lisa seated beside Thomas, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, Emma standing tall behind them, James and Lucy flanking them on either side. A family created not by blood but by love, choice, and a desperate lie that had somehow transformed into the most beautiful truth of Lisa's life. As they gathered their things to leave the photographer's studio, Thomas helped Lisa with her coat. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. Lisa looked at the three children who had changed everything, at Emma helping Lucy with her buttons, James already out the door and exploring the street, and at the man who had stood by her through it all. "More than I ever imagined possible," she replied, and it was nothing but the truth.